From the pages of Wrestling Remembered comes Where Are They Now? Our own Jimmy Farrow. Even though Jimmy's missing in action from the show for the past couple months, his chair is just waiting for his return. Currently, Farrow is on break from the show and is soaking up the sun with his love in Florida. Ron Shaw. Last we saw Ron, he and Monty buried the hatchet on an episode of Monte and the Pharaoh. Since then, Ron was seen threatening to punch a director after not receiving a role on the senior edition of the Jersey Shore. Currently, he can be seen beating up drunks at his country club. John Cena Sr. John Cena Sr. quickly became a friend of the show during the Thursday Night Wars. Currently, Mr. Cena can be found making his world-famous hot sauce. Daniela Petro. Former co-host Daniela was terminated for breaking the code of conduct of Monte and the Pharaoh and has returned to a life of irrelevance and posting about Matt Riddle on X.com. That's all for this week. Make sure to check out Wrestling Remembered for your weekly dose of wrestling history.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monte the Pharaoh, only seen here out of Indie Music Televisions in Ronkonkoma, New York. Guys, I want to welcome you. This go-home show before Christmas. I'm sorry for the late start. Our guest is running a little bit late. He got stuck at work, but he should be joining us shortly. Abe is watching to see... Look, he said probably another 20 minutes, Abe, so we'll just run a show without him. See what goes on. Hold on. Just texting him. If not, we're going to have to run this alone. Not good for the go-home show. All right, guys, sorry about that. So, couple of things going on with the show. We all know that Jimmy is down in Florida. Jimmy obviously is trying to reestablish himself in his new home. We've been talking about him trying to find some time coming on Thursdays and being back on Monte and the Pharaoh. And so we got a lot of work there. Abe has been working production at the board. We've got a lot of new shows on the channel. We've got True Crime, which is a crime show. We've got a baseball show, Twin Bill. I don't know, Benny could correct that. What do you call it? We got so many different shows. Sorry, I'm a little off base here because I just had expected my guest to be on time, and I verified with him numerous times. So I am sorry if I'm disappointing everybody. B40. Maybe we'll just go this route. Maybe I'll just answer questions about the show. Maybe a quarterly update. So you're asking, what about Skinner? Did he chicken out on Sunday? No. Skinner was all set to be in studio. And I personally decided that I was not going to do the show with him. My original plan was to interview him and then eventually ask him the questions about what his thought process was about the no-show. And wasn't probably 40. I probably wasn't in the best mood, and I wasn't going to be professional like I usually am. I mean, I know I ask hard questions, or we ask hard questions here, but I don't think I was going to be highly professional with Steve Kern. I'll give you a few reasons. Number one, because he decided I wanted to approach our interview the first time differently. He decided that Jimmy and myself didn't understand pro wrestling or his thought press of his generation. You guys watched that show where we had the blank couch, right? My other point was, I'll be 100% honest with you, Steve Kern, who I've heard a lot of not so great stories about, sits there and, preaches the word of God all the time on social media, whatever else he does. And, I just not a fan. Not a fan. Just I don't appreciate unprofessionalism in the recent weeks of doing this show. The unprofessionalism I've seen recently has been utterly ridiculous, right? We could start with when Jimmy left the show. Let me see. B40 said, Kern, respect, he was over for 2 weeks in Pensacola in 82. Too funny. So it starts when Jimmy leaves, right? I decide, and even Jimmy and I were talking before he left to Florida, that I wanted to bring a female host in, hence the gimmick of Jenny Farrow, right? Jimmy doesn't really have a sister, right? But we just thought it would be a funny gimmick. And I was talking to a few people that were interested in the role, but towards the end, that was before Jimmy was going to leave, right? So we were like, we'll bring this person on, we run this gimmick, right? Just entertainment, have a good time. And then Jimmy obviously goes to Florida, right? Life happens, and that's the move he had to make, and I totally get it. So I make the now unwise decision to bring in what's her name, right? So I thought, considering all her social media posts and everything else, that she would be good for the show. Jimmy reached out to me, and he wasn't happy with that choice, right? And a few of you people have reached out to me and said they didn't like her either, right? But when I get my head stuck on something, I think I can manage it through, and I thought that would definitely be the case. But obviously, I was wrong, which is purely represented on the weekend. And when that person came up here to New York, it was probably, I got to tell you, one of the worst weekends in my most recent life I've ever had. I mean, it was a living torture from the minute that plane landed until the minute that plane left New York. So, so that's where we're going. So again, when we bring on a lot of these wrestlers, most of them come on for free, depending on the situation. Some want to be paid. It depends on the situation, right? So we have a lot of sponsors that sponsor the show, things like that. But in recent weeks, I've run across some major issues with some sponsors and them being professional, right? So if you make an agreement with me and the show, the expectation is you're supposed to be there. Danny, he's running late. He's stuck at work. Again, he may no-show me. I don't know. I mean, I confirmed with him Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I confirmed with him today, and then he said he was stuck at work and he'd be a half an hour late, so we pushed the show a half an hour. Now he's telling me he's running behind again. So hopefully he comes on. If not, we'll do the best we can to entertain. I would expect out of this show I would give you guys more going into Christmas. I wanted you guys to have something to sink your teeth into before you have a wonderful Christmas with your family. So, hence we talked about that. We've discussed the return of Jimmy. The one, what a day wants to be interviewed instead. Joe, yeah, that'd be great. How do I put this? So, I've been in this, we've been in this 3, 4, 5 years, and we've had some really great moments with people, and we've tried to do our best to entertain people. But I will tell you that Jimmy and myself both agree on this, that we've never run across so much nonsense and BS through our lives. It's been crazy, 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 and it's amazing. And maybe maybe I'm just, I don't know, what's the word when you're maybe I'm just naive, Abe. What do you think about that?
I mean, there were a lot of things that were kind of unforeseeable, I mean, you got to put your trust into people sometimes, and sometimes people don't reciprocate,
But you see, here's the funny thing, and we were just we had the question in the 30, right? So there's this guy on X, and he's complaining about, and maybe throw up some pictures, that Alexa Bliss's manager, like he had some kind of deal with them, and the manager got whatever he was getting for, and then sent a check to this fan, and then the check was a completely fake check. Now, you could be naive, right? That's naive, right? You're in your basement, whatever you do, and if you think at any point that you have the business sense, or Alexa Bliss is actually going to reach out to you and do business with you because you're just so hot and she just wants this young man in her life. The big joke I always say is, like, if you just say you're a fan of Alexa Bliss and you like her page or you follow them, somehow, whatever they use, spam mail or however they work, you'll get, Alexa Bliss -124, writing you and say, oh, you're so handsome. What's your name? I'm so glad you're my fan, and blah, blah, blah. So this dude, whatever deal he does, he gets a fake check. I mean, in that point, I kind of get it, right? Like, you're an idiot. Like, you're an idiot to even fall for that. I mean, even in this podcasting thing, you've got people that reach out to you, right? And they say to you, oh, I can help your show. I can do all this, and I can get you more views, organic views, and everything else. Oh, what's the cost? Oh, it's only costs you $350 a month. And, I can only imagine all the hungry podcasters, forget about the wrestling podcasters, but just the hungry podcasters out there that just fall into that bait alone, right? And the reality of it is, if anyone doesn't understand this, right, there's obviously something called bots, right? You can buy bots, and bots will get you views, and then I guess if you have a whole bunch of views, people think you're something special. At least that's the idea behind it. So some dude puts together a business plan, and he tells you, pay me $350, and he pays, $80 for bots, shows you that he's doing something for you, and in the end he's making 100% profit on every sucker that falls for this nonsense, right? So, like, I'm a big analytics guy in my job, and I'm a big analytics person, and that's why I love YouTube, right? YouTube has every analytic. No one can tell me anything different, right? So I got people like, I'll use Bruce for example. So ESO, good friend of the show, I consider him a good friend of mine, right? He actually he controls the show now. I actually have given him full access to the YouTube channel. I'm going to give him full access to the Facebook channel. But he asks me questions all the time, right? And, Bruce is kind of new to it, and he kind of asks questions that newbies ask, right? Like, why isn't this happening or why isn't that happening, right? And there's so much involved in this, and the bottom line is that if you're trying to build something, again, wasn't Jimmy's real job. It's not my real job. It was these two old guys who liked wrestling and decided to do a show for shits and giggles, and then people started watching, and we enjoyed it, right? But in order to that, you have to keep reinvesting the money you make, right? You can't take the money and put it in your pocket, right? So, like, this is a real television studio I'm in right now. So the one thing we didn't want to do was do like everybody else does, right? Either just do audio or sit at your computer and talk to someone. Anyone could do that, right? And you know what? Some people do well at it, right? Like, again, I'm not a fan of Dutch Mantel. I'm just not. I don't find him entertaining. I know I'm not in the percentage that does, right? A lot of people like him, obviously. So obviously the kid from England, right? He does that thing on a computer with Dutch Mantel. They record it. He probably cuts out all the garbage in there, right? So it's not live broadcasting, right? So and it makes sense, and he probably does pretty well for himself because he wouldn't be doing it. And Dutch Mantel ain't doing that for free, man. Okay, understand this. Dutch Mantel is not going on to YouTube for free, okay? So there must be some kind of payment agreement, and the kid from England must be making enough money that he's able to support himself. And from what I understand, he is married, right, from talking to the wrestlers who've been on the show. So he's paying Dutch Mantel, and he's probably making enough money off that, right? I mean, Christ almighty, anytime that dude posts a video, there's 50,000 views on it. So, if the retention time is enough, the kid's making money. That's just the way this whole thing works. So we've had the honor to have a lot of these wrestlers in the studio that have entertained us all for a very, very long time, and it's been fun. Some of them I consider friends, but I want you guys to understand this too, is that they're not your friend, right? It's like we talk on the phone. I could tell you, there's 10 wrestlers I may talk on the phone to or speak on the phone to regularly, every week at least, right? It's not me calling them, right? It's either them calling me. But they're not your friend, right? There's an end game to this. There's always an end game. They're always working. They're always working. They're always working. So when someone thinks that, these guys are your friends, they're not. They've been brought up in an industry where they've been taught to take every single penny from every fan. This is fact. Okay, this is not make-believe. If anyone wants to tell you anything different, it's what it is. So it's funny, when you talk about Marati, for example, me and Jimmy personally were not big fans of his in the beginning, meaning that we just didn't think he was a good person, right? And again, newbie, we were new, pretty much babes in the woods. So the way we looked at it was that, he was mean to the wrestlers and took advantage of the wrestlers, yada, yada, yada. Well, and the reality of it, guys, when I look at it all and, you come full circle, the first channel gets knocked out, we've done all these interviews, we've met all these people, we've had dinner with them, whatever else. Marati was just protecting Marati because Marati knew that he was probably going to be worked. ESO's talking. I saw it. Let's see. RJ says you're right, Monty, and a lot will get offended by pointing that out. Well, thank you, brother. I mean, this is facts. So I kind of understand where Marati's coming from, right? I totally get it now. I understand because now firsthand, ESO says he saw it firsthand with Jerry Saggs and Aaron Sims going at it. So the story behind that is we have a bunch of sponsors, and part of the deal is the sponsors want some autographs. So they, some have restaurants, things like that. They want autographs put on the sign. So when an agent comes here, part of the deal is they have to give me 10 signed photos, right? Because I have 10 sponsors that want these photos. Now, I'm not always privy to everything that goes on here, right? Because I'm in the studio setting up, making sure everything's going properly, things like that. ESO was down in here in New York, and he was taking care of some of my business for me, right? Making sure things were signed. I have people that enjoy the show, and a lot of time. And again, let me put it this way: the real trust and the real people out there are the people right now watching this show, or right now that write me and tell me how much they enjoy the show. Why are they the real people? Because you're honest, caring people. This is fact, and I'll use an example. I have one person, I won't name him, he watches the show regularly, and he'll send me things to be signed, right? Because he knows wrestlers are coming in. Now, in this world that I've seen since doing the show, half the time people would take advantage and steal the shit or do something with it. I have one guy that waited 8 months to get his stuff signed. It was sitting in my man cave because of my connection to the wrestler he wanted to have signed. It just kept falling through. So, and that's why I say you guys are real, right? Every one of you are real. So anyway, ESO's in the back, and Sims, who's the agent, knows what our deal is, and he's getting the 10 pictures signed. But what does he do? He tells Saggs, sign 25 pictures. And Saggs is like, for what? He goes, Monty's sponsors. So, always being worked, right? And good. Sims is a friend of mine, but I called him out on this too, because I told him, don't use my name for shit, right? Don't do that. So, he wanted to get extra autographs, 15 extra autographs, which he'll sell to the general public, like all of us, for $40, $30, $20. It's all free, right? So now you have the Nasty Boy signature. 20 times 10, 200. 20 times 20, that's $400 in Eric Sims' pocket using my names. That's the way it is. And you know what? That's the one thing I do enjoy about the show. When I have a wrestler on the couch, I don't try to embarrass them, but I will ask the hard question. Because you know what? There's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense going on. And the one thing I don't accept from anybody is disrespecting me or disrespecting my friends, right? Or disrespecting my family. So, again, Luce, thank you. Luce always has been by our side since the minute we started this show. Or at least within the first year anyway. Always has had our back. Always a good guy. Always took care of us. I'll be honest out there. Luce wrote me a few times, and right, Luce, and you can verify this. You told me that co-host was a mistake, right? And I didn't argue with you. I just said trust in Monty. I think I said, but just like I'll admit it. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We've seen a lot of stuff here. I got to tell you, I try to answer every comment on all our social media pages to the best of my ability. And like one example, some of the things that are said about the wrestlers alone is rough, right? It's okay to not like someone, disagree, but some of the things people say about, I use Terry Reynolds, for example. I have a very soft spot for Terry Reynolds. She came here in the studio. She was really, to me, was a very nice person. Again, I don't know what issues she has or whatever else. I'm not privy to that. I don't know that. All I know is the person I met in the studio, and she was a very nice, seemed very caring person. And, clearly we've discussed this with her relationship with New Jack. And, again, there's always two stories to everything that goes on here in life, right? With us, with the show, whatever else goes on. And the way people tear apart Terry Reynolds on social media, it's like, I just don't get it. I don't get it at all. I mean, here you go, two people get in a relationship. Obviously, there's intimacy in those relationships. And I'm sorry, whatever problems Terry had or whatever else with New Jack, I don't think at any point, and I mean this, that he should have been revealing what was going on sexually in the bedroom with them. That with those videos I saw, I just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. It's like, how would you want to tear someone down like that and humiliate them? And then obviously people who see those videos, they hold it as the truth. And I'm not saying it's not the truth. What I'm trying to say to you is that they'll sit there and then they'll just talk like they know about it and destroy someone. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, oh boy, if you're in this role of fame at some point, how do you handle that kind of abuse? I don't know. I could certainly understand why certain people would probably check out. Phil, you're bringing up the Iron Claw, right? Now, I'm a huge Von Erich guy. And more importantly, I'm a huge Kerry Von Erich guy, right? For whatever reason, growing up, I thought Kerry Von Erich was one of the greatest of all time. And here's a guy who made it in wrestling, NWA World Champion, clearly had some drug issues, and we all know the story. When he got caught with prescription drugs, there was no doubt he was going to jail. Instead of going to jail, he decided to shoot himself in the chest. But I thought to myself, like, wow, here's Kerry Von Erich. Why would he have killed himself? Why not just like hang out and just do the couple of years you got and get out of jail? And then I look like a guy like Ken Patera. This guy who spent a lot of time in jail for literally throwing a boulder through a McDonald's window, right? I mean, some people get less for more. I mean, let's just use Sonny, for example. I mean, how many chances did that girl get without going to jail? Ken Patera will never live down that until the day he dies, that McDonald's deal. Now, again, it's a story, a good story for wrestling, a good story to maybe talk about. But the way people talk about Ken Patera is literally about that situation is embarrassing. Like, to be Ken Patera and people to dog you like the way they dog him, it's pretty disgusting in a lot of ways. People nowadays don't know, like, you can say how you feel, but you don't have to go to a point where you try to destroy someone. What's the point of destroying people? And look, me and Jimmy are guilty, right? And more me than Jimmy, right? Because I would say to Jimmy, I want to talk about this. This is what we're going to talk about. And, Jimmy's always been a good partner. And even when he disagreed, he still was part of the team and went that way. And a lot of times it was good. A lot of times it was bad. Use Riddle, for example. Ken Patera says a disgruntled employee threw the boulder. I know he did. And I don't know if that's true or not. It didn't seem like Jim Brunzell and Greg Gagne thought it was true. But, again, here's a guy who was an Olympic weightlifter, and let's call him an Olympic hero. And his greatest fame, claim to fame is going to jail for a hamburger, which is just insane in my mind. But going back to my other thought was, Matt Riddle, right? We all remember Matt Riddle was accused of something by an independent wrestler right here on Long Island, and Jimmy and I defended him. And then all these other things started coming out about Matt Riddle, where we eventually met whatever her name is, right? And the reason I won't use her name anymore is because I literally don't think I've never disliked a person more than that, right? So how quick that turns, right? So Jimmy and I did a pretty solid job on Matt Riddle, right? To a point where Matt Riddle was going to come on the show, and then I think he wanted to kick the shit out of me and Jim. Like, literally, he was going to be on that couch right after his contract was up with the WWE. He was going to be sitting on a shot. It was a done deal, guys. Okay, I'm not bullshitting anyone, all right? That was a done deal. And then it got, then he kind of, I don't think he really knew who we were. He knew who we were, but when the deal was done for him to come for the interview, I don't think he realized it was us. And once he found out it was us, the deal was squashed. But the fact of the matter is that we went after Matt Riddle off of someone else's supposed experience with him. And after you get to know that person, you realize, I don't know if Matt Riddle really did this, because this other one's a friggin' whack job. She's a literal whack job. So that's why, we're guilty, right? We're guilty. We were guilty with the Marati thing, right? Because we thought Marati was a bad guy. And just going back to the start of the conversation, Marati really wasn't a bad guy. He just was protecting Dan Marati. And you know what? These guys will crush you. If you had a penny to your name, they would take that penny. So when people tell me, about GoFundMe pages and things like that, I'm not funding anybody's GoFundMe page. Because you know what? These guys would take your last penny, take your last shirt, Let's get real. The kid in England, if Dutch Mantel all of a sudden the kid from England got on a bad streak and he didn't have any money, you think Dutch Mantel would still do the show with him because they're friends? Dutch Mantel would be gone in 10 seconds and wouldn't know the dude's name anymore. Let's get real here. Let's just get real. Seriously. Right? I said it with King Kalua, right? With Marty Jannetty. Marty's been a good guy, right? I talk to him all the time. He's a good guy. But Marty's about Marty too. It's just the way they are, man, and I'm just not feeling it. All right, guys, I'm going to check on our guest, see what he's looking like. Let's see what's going on here.
Yeah, I still see no.
You want to bounce ESO in? He wants to jump on the show.
Yeah, I'll send him an email right now.
ESO is going to join me for a few, and then we'll see if Just Incredible gets on. I know you guys are waiting for him, so. Finish the fight with Marty. I don't want you guys to get me wrong. Just because I said they'll take you for the last dime doesn't mean that somewhere in there isn't a good person. I think somewhere along the line, they've been trained. And this is how look, when they call you a mark, and I've learned this, so I'm not trying to be an expert here, they learn that from the circus. B40, saw a recent podcast, some promoter had a nightmare week. Well, B40, that was my hope to discuss that today. It is in the script. So if Justin joins us, you'll get to hear it live and in person. I promise you. Okay? Because that will be one of the questions. RJ, Marty's living the old party life. Lucky he's still around. Look, again, that's the other thing, too. I don't judge people on the lives they live, right? I was listening to Dan and Benny. He had one of my good friends, one of the real good guys, Rick Allen, on the show. Now, that's a good guy, okay? That's an honest guy. That's a good guy. But Rick Allen, even though he was a very famous wrestler at the time, he's not one of them. He's not one of those wrestlers. He's just not. But Rick was on Dan and Benny in the ring, and Rick had said that, he doesn't blame anybody for the life they live. It's just not something that he would condone. So, Marty's had a blessed life, right? He's had a lot of money. He's had a good time. He's got a bunch of good wrestling friends. Got a little drinking going on. They enjoy themselves. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Again, all I'm saying is it doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them... Am I contradicting myself here, Abe? Because I feel like I'm contradicting myself. I don't want to say they're bad people. I'm just going to say that understand the beast that you're playing with.
Yeah. No, I think that makes total sense. I mean, you can never really tell when someone's going to be a bad person. I mean, you can't always tell when someone's going to be a bad person, right? You know?
But that's what I mean. I don't want to say they're bad people. Look, again, if you rape someone, you hurt someone.
Yeah, that's more objective.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Okay? If you go out of your way to destroy someone's career, that's a bad person, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're vindictive, right? On a lower level, if you take people's money and they're willing to let you take their money, it's bad because maybe morally you should be like, hey, I shouldn't take this dude's money or this girl's money. But I guess it's part of the game.
I mean, that's definitely a way to look at it, but I think, you know, if the way you make money is off the backs of other people that are actually working hard, it's all how you judge it, right? Like, I look at those people and I don't, those people are scumbags, you know? They don't want to work. You're the one who's working, so, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. You know what? It isn't the right way to act. And then again, here's the other thing, too. It's like, I was a wrestler back in 1970. Yeah, I sold out Madison Square Garden, right? It's 2023. You're now irrelevant. In reality, you're irrelevant. You're as relevant as I am, okay? And that's not saying much. So my point is like, you know what? Check yourself. Understand yourself. I mean, I'll go back to a year ago or a year and a half ago when I was ranting about AJ Lee charging $900 and the promoter charging $900 for an autograph and a picture and something else. And it's like, at what point is enough here, right? It's like, this is, guys, this is why I don't belong, right? I'll tell you a story. Way back, I tried to get into promoting a little bit. I wanted to see if I could do it. So I had Roddy Piper, right? Roddy Piper, one of the all-time greats, famous guy, right? Bring him in, right? Decent price, I think. I literally think I was charging $20 for an autograph and a picture, right? Which is, in today's day and age, Roddy Piper would have been getting $100, $120. But here's the thing. People are online. And the line, guys, the line is long, man. It's deep. It's long and it's deep. And there's literal people coming up to me with their family. And the dude's got a crumpled $5 bill in his hand. And he's like, he's my hero. I'm not working. I can't afford it. I brought my family here just to meet Roddy Piper. And I'll be honest with you. Let the guy keep it. I don't know if I took the $5 or let him keep the $5. But I let him go meet Roddy Piper. Yeah. Now, with respect to Eric Sims, there's no way in a million years Eric Sims would let this guy go meet Roddy Piper. Okay? I mean, that's a fact. All right? So that's when I realized I wasn't meant for the promoting business, right? Because I realized, you know what? I don't have the heart. Like, I'm going to see a guy who idolizes someone, and he has his one opportunity to meet this guy, and I'm going to be the guy that stops that from happening. That's karma, man, right? But it's funny to me because I look at these things, and it seems like the guys that are the good guys are the guys that get screwed over in the end. Like, if you're just not a nasty son of a bitch, you're not going to win this fight.
That seems to be how it goes, you know. It seems to be the most like cutthroat people somehow end up on the top, you know. And it's good to be a good person, but I guess sometimes it just doesn't doesn't pay well, you know.
Hey, Sims just chimed in. He just put nope. At least one thing about Sims is he's honest, and that's why I like him, right? I do like Eric Sims a lot. He's honest. But I got to tell you, when he's on his deathbed, I don't know if this will happen, but he's going to think about all the things that he might have done, and he's going to, oh, there's my boy. He could chime in. I know he's a big Sims fan. But, hey, so thanks for joining, bro.
Hey, what's going on there?
All right, man. So back to that, Abe, is I love Sim's honesty, but Sims worships the almighty dollar.
Yeah, and that is not as fulfilling as some people make it seem. You know what I mean?
Well, again, if you're winning, right? Maybe that's all that matters. I don't know. What says never trust an ECW ever when it comes to the business? Well, you might be right. So, Bruce, I'm waiting on Just Incredible. Did you watch Just Incredible growing up?
I did. I saw him in the Attitude Era, but no, I mean, I was not a big Just Incredible fan. But hey, he definitely had his time in the spotlight there. Maybe not in the main spotlight, but he made it up to the big boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Business and success is with ESS. I got to tell you. So let me ask you something, Bruce. In the short time that you met Eric Sims, what were your thought processes when you're driving home, thinking about that wonderful... In fact, you know what? I'm going to give you the dais right now. Tell the people your experience that weekend. Soup the nuts.
No. Let me start. No, let me start with the first time I met Eric. And honestly, I have a lot more. I like Eric now. My first interaction with him was the first time I came down to interview with you, and when we did Tommy Wildfire Rich, Manny Fernandez back then, and I brought down. At that point, I was sponsoring the show, and my main business is T-shirts and custom apparel, stuff like that. And Eric didn't even want to greet me. Eric says, "Hey, you have one in 3X." At this point, listen, I wasn't. I was so enamored because check. I'm hanging out with Marty Jannetty. I'm hanging out with Tommy Wildfire Ridge, Manny Fernandez, all these awesome people, and Val Venus, Eugene. It was a great night. So I had these rose-colored glasses on, but I went home that night, and one of the things that really struck me was Eric really wasn't friendly. He didn't know who I was, so he didn't care to get to know me at that point. Now, since then, I've met Eric several times since then. He knows me by name. We've gotten to have a little bit better of a relationship. But, it takes that little bit with him to get to that point. And, I was there in the room with Eric and Sags, and Sags turns to me and says, "You got 30 sponsors on this channel?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, Jerry, actually, we probably have a lot more than that, but I'm just sitting there. I'm trying to watch Phil and you interview Magnum TA, and I got these two fighting in front of me." So
you lost your sound.
Yeah, that was you lost sound?
Now you're back. Okay, good.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but no, that was my first interaction with that's been my interactions, and then here was the part that so Eric and I are now sitting there in the green room. It's just me and him, and we get to actually have a real conversation. And he's a good dude, but you know what? You got the agent Eric, and then you have the real Eric, and I think they're kind of two different people there.
That's a good analysis. Eric, there are two different Erics for sure. I've seen both sides of them, right? So I can't disagree with that at all. How about your experiences with Tony Atlas?
Well, I have to say, as a kid, Tony was awesome. First time I met Tony, I was probably 9 years old. He was gracious to the kids. Second time I met him, he had come out of the gym. He was in Newburgh, New York. Again, really cool dude. Talked to me for a few minutes. I wasn't asking for autographs or anything, so it was just a conversation. He happened to be literally staying in the city. He must have had a friend that lived in the condos that I lived in at that point, because he was staying in that development there. And then there was the past weekend or the few weekends ago at the big show in New York, and honestly, he was a totally different person. he was pleasant. Honestly, I had a friend of mine down there with me, awesome to my friend. But to me, he was kind of a little bit of a dick. I was a little bit surprised. He thought that I was trying to screw you over by working with Eric. So
Which
no
okay, I can
idea.
appreciate that, right? So that was okay with me. When you told me that story, I was like, all right, I understand. That at least he was protecting my interest. You know what I mean?
No, I get it, but it just was a little strange. I mean, I'd met him that morning, and we were all hanging out, whatever. There was no problems up until later in the day, but and then at one point he kind of tried to work me a little bit in the green room, and I wasn't having it, so we had a little, not an argument, but I put him not put him in his place, but I'm watching you guys interview in a room over, but at the same time, here's the reality. I still have other shit going on. I got something on my phone. I needed to look something up, so I went on my iPad. I needed to do something. Tony and Jerry Sags are, I don't know, are 5 feet away from me. I go on my, I turn it off on my iPad. Tony turns around, starts yelling at me. What are you doing that for? I'm watching that. You're not watching this. You're arguing with this guy over here. Stop trying to work me. You're just trying to get attention from me at this point.
I got Phil in the house, but I'll tell you a quick story. Then I'm going to go to Phil. Early on, we had Tony Atlas for an interview, and Jimmy used to do a segment called 5 Minutes with the Pharaoh. And, Jimmy's very good. He's very artistic, and he does really good comedy skits, etc. So we're done with the interview with Atlas. Fantastic interview. Literally an hour and a half with Atlas. Interviewing him. He goes in the green room, Atlas, and Jimmy follows him and say, Jimmy, Tony, can I shoot a 5 minutes with the Pharaoh with you? I believe Sims might have been the agent at the time. And Atlas says to him, who's this guy? Get him the fuck out of here. Who are you? And Jimmy was literally crushed. Because Atlas was a hero of his, and the way Tony dressed him down, I remember Jimmy was crushed for like a month. And that's my whole point of the start of this conversation, since I'm right now just incredibleless, discuss my real experiences and what I really feel. And who better also to discuss their experiences? Phil, I know you've had many, and I'm not leading you. Give us a story, brother.
First we'll cover Mr. Sims, whom I had the opportunity to meet down in Long Island, a month and a half ago. And actually, Bruce was right next to me when I met Eric. Bruce, do you remember the situation? We were at the table. No. You don't remember?
No, I don't.
I'll describe it. Tony Atlas was busy signing the glossy pictures. And Mr. Sims comes up to me like Mr. Burns coming up to Homer Simpson, never remembering with all the personality.
Yeah, Eric is a little bossy.
Hey, separate those pictures. Make sure they don't smudge anything. Do you work for them? I said, well, yeah, kinda, but I'm not kind of working here right now. And then I think he turned to you and he snapped at you and said, come on, man, separate those pictures. You're going to smudge everything up, so...
To give him credit, honestly, when you're using those sharp, I learned that day, had no idea beforehand, and I'm there helping out. I mean, Eric did give me the way you have to stack them so they don't smudge, because the Sharpie takes a little bit of time. But at the same time, no, Eric was a dick about that.
I'd say he's probably a great businessman, but he's learning the human interaction thing, I think. But I think he seems like a good guy at heart, though, I have to say. It's a unique approach, I think, to situations.
You just overlook the rough edges.
Here's the thing, and I'll defend Sims here because I do like Sims a lot.
Oh, yeah.
He is an agent like Marati was. So I know deep in Sims's heart, he knows that he can't let the guys that we spoke about earlier run roughshod over him because he was a wrestling fan, because he knows in the end result then he's going to lose money and he's going to be taken advantage of. So I kind of get the reason he acts that way.
When he was, when he was telling me, hey, you don't want that to smudge. Hey, that one's got a smudge on it. You know what? You just cost him $10. It makes sense.
Yeah. No, I get that. It just the way the people skills thing, you know,
Yeah, he's definitely challenged on that. Yeah, that's
but
why I
again,
say,
we're
I
all
mean,
blessed and cursed in different ways, you know. And Tony is an interesting character too. You know, if you've ever talked to Tony, you know, um,
Well,
it
Phil,
can be
let
a
me
battle.
stop you right there. Here's my question.
Okay.
Who was right and who was wrong in the Marathi Atlas fight?
Oh, well, we know that Dan did go to some extreme measures to exact, I guess, I'd say a little vengeance. And you know, it's interesting, and I think that was Dan's personality. I don't know if it was the Boston in him, the Italian in him, or what it was, but we saw it with Justin. And I don't know if you're going to broach that subject, Mike, or you were intending to talk to Justin about his last appearance on Boston Wrestling. I don't know if you know much about what happened.
No, I
Do you
do
remember
not.
that?
Fill me in.
Well, Justin had come down, and I actually met him at the studio a few times. He was slated to do a series of interviews, I think even a weekly sort of thing. And he being in Connecticut, you know, relatively close to the Boston studios, he's able to drive up. So he had a deal with Dan, and of course, Dan had prepaid him, and he was scheduled to come up again, and he just blew it off. He, you know, maybe he has a million excuses. Maybe they're all legitimate. I don't know, but it seems like this has been a kind of a history here. So he no-showed Dan, and Dan basically aired the last recorded show with Justin. And this show went on air. I want, mind you, this show went on the air the night that Dan died. So very, very weird timing. At the end of the show, Dan blasted Justin's phone number on the screen. He explained what happened and put Justin's phone number on the screen, and had a little, I guess, a little more revenge too. So, you know, that was Dan's thing. You know, if you screw him, he's going to get you back, and perhaps even more so. So,
Right.
you know, was it extreme? Was it too much? You know, in Tony's case, was very personal, and with the family especially, I totally get it. It's, you know, family kind of should be off limits, I think.
yeah,
Well,
that step
beyond
brother
that,
thing was
though,
a
who
little.
was wrong there? Tony tell me the story that Dan would give him no money at all, basically. And then when he finally asked for a raise, they had a falling out, and Tony said, okay, I just don't want to do your show anymore. And then Dan went on the offensive on him. Is that true?
Only Dan really knows that. Only Dan and Tony, I think, ultimately, because Dan would keep, you know, what Dan says, and you know, what happened might be a little different, you know. And Dan kept some of those things close to his vest. I think maybe both parties were a little bit at fault. You know, Dan certainly helped Tony up big time, and Tony in turn during COVID invited Dan up to the house, came up to Maine, and they did their interviews there. And let me point you to a video if you don't have it already, and if you haven't seen it. One of the funniest scenes was Dan was on the porch interviewing Tony, and Dan had an inordinate, tremendous fear of cats. And the neighbor's cat apparently jumped into the into the picture, actually, as they were broadcasting. And Dan jumped out of his seat, almost shrieking like a girl and swearing. It was the best scene, man, and priceless. So I tell everyone, check it out. Funny, funny, funny.
So,
I watched it a million times.
So Phil, being part of that Boston wrestling scene and everything, did you see Dan taking advantage of wrestlers like Marty Jannetty and Iron Sheik and Tony Atlas and some of the other ones that have
No.
accused him of doing that? Or do you
No.
see more of the wrestlers working against?
You know, it could be a leverage thing too. I mean, you know, and the rest was, you know, they'll jump around from one person, one podcast, one interview to the next program, and they might be using this as leverage to command a higher price. And you know, everything's a negotiation. And you know, even though you might settle on the terms and go through with the service, go through with the interview and everything else, maybe in hindsight they question themselves. Maybe they could have gotten a little more, and you know, so I think sometimes some resentment might build and might take the form of you know, statements like that. So I don't know, man. The wrestlers are the workers ultimately, you know. And,
Well, let me ask you the question to both of you. Both of you growing up lifelong wrestling fans, and then finally, not saying you got behind the curtain, but close enough, did the experiences ruin everything that you imagined?
I don't think so. Go ahead, Bruce.
I will say, Tony Atlas, this past time I met him as an adult for the first time. I mean, I met him as an adult in my late teens, early 20s, but that was a little disappointing to just to see kind of the other side of the veil. I'm not disappointed in meeting. I've gotten to meet some amazing people in the last couple of years, but overall, there's definitely a different side to things when you realize how much these guys do try to work everybody, especially the ones that didn't necessarily get to the top of the cards and that are, came out of the 80s and the 90s and are now just doing the autograph circuit to make a living and stay alive. That's where I think it's a little disappointing. But
Yeah, and I think I do have some sympathy considering. I mean, we also get to see how hobbled some of these guys are. I mean, how difficult it is for some of them to even move now. So I think with that comes some sympathy, some understanding, and maybe why they act the way they do. It's interesting, and Marty in person is really kind of the same Marty we see on screen. I would say for the most part. I think he is kind of who he is, no matter what, when the cameras are on or not, and I think that's true for most of these people too. They are who they are in large part, and can they be a little conniving, a little shady sometimes? I guess so, but you know what? That might just be a product of what they've been exposed to and what they felt on their end. So, I think being a wrestler is.
I think part of it's now. Also, I think now it's also recognizing that because, I would say me in my 30s, if I would have been approached by some of these wrestlers that I've met in the way you have to just treat them as human, or as soon as they pull the bullshit out, you cut the crap right away, because they will work you. They're gonna try and work you. They're gonna try and get over on you, and that's the sad part about it. But overall, once you do that, I think that most of them are okay people. But listen, you still got to have your guard up.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's scary that you have to have your guard up, right? You got to do business the right way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
and
you know what? I grew up in New York, and the area of New York I'm from, Orange County, Newburgh, New York. You got to have your guard up all the time anyway, because it's scammers. Everybody's out to work you for something. And listen, I'm the nicest person in the world, but I'm not an idiot. So you always have to have your guard up. If it smells like roses, it's probably shit. So you just got to keep. If they're presenting, the more they hype it up, the more you got to think, what's the other side?
You said Orange County. Is that where the Tuttles are? Where that motorcycle?
Oh yeah, those guys are hustlers.
Those guys. They are.
Yeah.
Hustlers.
I actually, Paul Tuttle I knew a little bit.
Senior or junior?
Paul Tuttle Junior.
Yeah.
I did know Senior a little bit too. I met him, but Paul Tuttle Junior. He was a few years older than me, but I was a baseball player. He was a baseball player, and he was always pompous dick.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. And I'm probably more guilty than most, right? If you trust someone too much, you're going to get burnt. And you know
Absolutely.
the players that you're playing with, right? So the script is written there, right? So we use tonight for an example. I knew there was more than a 50% chance that he was not showing up tonight.
Me too. Absolutely.
But
Definitely.
I said, you know what? This is Monte the Pharaoh. These guys know how important we are. I'm hoping he won't blow it. But I always verify, right? I always verify 2 days before. a day before, just to make sure, because shit happens, right? People have their real lives, and I get it. But the minute I just knew it, like after he said he's like all good, I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And then when I wrote him tonight, just to make sure, and then it took a while for an answer, I knew there was a problem. But then you fall into the survival mode, right? You're like, oh shit, what am I doing now? I'm knee deep in it. All I can hope is that someone's going to stand by their word. And then most honestly, and most of the time, they just don't.
Yeah. This is the third instance where I personally know the parties involved on the back end who are getting burned by this guy. The third instance in however many years it's been, 2.5 years or whatever. Seems like every year I'm party of this situation where he just doesn't honor his end.
But let's talk the reality of it, though. This is just incredible, right? It's not like this is Magnum TA, right? It's not like, dare I say, Steve
This
Kerr.
guy's never main evented anything.
How about just unreliable?
Well, dude, there's a
Maybe
whole
an
bunch
indie
of
card.
just at the bar, just the dealer's late. There's a lot of that going on the chat. If I read this, it's hilarious. But it's like, I was actually going to do the show based on protecting him against the promoter that did the whole thing on Hannibal's, that guy,
Wow.
right? I was actually going to, protect him, be like, hey. But the reality of it is I knew what was going to happen. And it was like, I told Abe I'm going to go. He's at work. I'll give him a half an hour. We'll start the show late. RJ says, just where's my weed?
Mike, if you can get a hold of this guy that talked to Hannibal, I'll get a hold of Jim Burgoyne from Lucky Pro, and we'll get Gary McKinstry on to connect with Dan on the other side, and we'll all talk about our experiences.
I think that would be a great Gary's a hero of mine, so as we know.
Me too. Yeah, yeah.
But again, listen, everybody hung in there. You guys came on. It was good. You know what? A good discussion. I don't want to come off as being a hater. I don't want to come off as being not humbled by my experience on this show. But the reality of it is I'm a realist. And, I will tell you, most of the time I'm disappointed by, for whatever reason. Now, there's some great guys out there. There's Tito Santana, right? Stand-up guy. Incredible human being. Maven. Stand-up guy. Good guy.
Yeah.
But then you got the Wolfie D's of the world, right? Like, hey, I want to be on your channel. I'm going to do a video. Okay, listen, if I sell a sponsor for your show, that means you have to stay on for the year, right? Because they're paying for it. This is real business, right? They're paying for it. The minute he got that money, he was done. Went to 7-Eleven, got his beer, or whatever the fuck else he does, and he was done. This is the way these guys are. And it's like, it amazes me that they even get supported at this point. Legitimately. And listen, I'll call it like it is because I've seen it all. I've seen how they all act and what they do and how they act. You know what I'm saying? You know who's a good guy? Jamie Dundee is a good guy.
So, Phil, you were down there with me at the big event.
Yeah.
How many wrestlers were there promoting themselves, and how short were those lines? Because they've alienated everybody else.
Yeah. Good number.
There were people. There were a lot. I mean, I'm not going to drop any names, but there might have been somebody with no chin that had absolutely nobody there.
I went by his spot. Yeah. I didn't. Yeah. Not a single soul.
What's the point, though? What's your point?
Well, it's just it kind of shows how they've kind of, they've gotten themselves to that point where they're not. You didn't have a spot. You didn't have an agent bringing them in. You had nobody else bringing them in, and then they made no money on it. They made themselves a little bit on the irrelevant side.
Okay, so I want to be fair here, and I'm not trying to discredit you, Bruce, but let's be honest here. They had Rhea Ripley, the Bella Twins, Mandy Rose. I mean, listen?
Mr.
Goes
Chin
back. Hold on, let me get my
right
point.
on-
It goes back to the original conversation. You were a famous wrestler in the 80s. It is now 2023. You are now irrelevant. You're not relevant anymore. Who's relevant? Rhea Ripley, the Bella Twins. God, I can't believe I'm saying this.
Mandy.
Hook. You know what I mean? It's like you're irrelevant. So the only point I would say to your point is then stop working people so much.
Yeah. Honesty goes far. It can go far.
Did you see? Have you seen the lineup for that next big event that they've got going?
RVD is going to be there again, isn't he?
Well, they've got Stacy Keibler, Tori Wilson, Kurt Angle.
Yes.
They've got Francine. They've got a lot of women this time, and they haven't even announced the big headliners.
Yeah,
yet,
but you see the ones you just named there? There'll be absolutely no lines for them either when the WWE, they bring in their talent, right? So who knows? They're going to bring in Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins? Game over. All those people you named, there ain't no one signing up for them.
Well, maybe they should keep the playing field level and not have these. Have it focus on stars of the 90s, stars of the 80s.
Sim says MJF is coming in. But again, that's the problem. Whoever's promoting that event is crushing everything else. They're making... Again, if people keep getting tables, it doesn't matter to them, right? They're fine with it. I don't they got MJF there. I don't know if MJF is going to draw a ton. Like, I guess he will. I don't know.
Well, here's the reality. If you look at it, I don't even think the tables matter at that point. All of us are just extra because they're probably making enough off of all those headliners coming in that we don't even matter.
Yeah, that's the point. Absolutely. I agree 100%. But, going back to the original fact is, like, just incredible. It's like, really, dude? You can't make your commitment?
That might be his new gimmick, being a no-show. He could parlay that into a new act. Maybe we'll see him on TV.
What's his new name?
Or not see him on
Just
TV.
Invisible?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway. Wait, that's copyright infringement. You can't see me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's
You
right.
can't find any jorts that fit him anymore.
Sims is right. Sims is saying no money for the little guy. There is no money for the little guy. Not for those events. Not for those events. All right, anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me. I'm sorry, guys, if you were waiting for Just Incredible. I'll check my messages one more time. I doubt there's anything here, but we'll check.
I'm sure many people have his number now. Give him a call.
Yeah. Well, nothing from Just Incredible, so I guess he's just out of luck. Anyway, I want to thank you guys. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas out there. And Phil, Bruce, I much appreciate you guys, what you've done for the channel and the Monte The Pharaoh show. And I really do appreciate that. I want to tell you all, love you. And we'll talk soon.
We love you, man. Thanks.
All right, brother.
God
Later,
bless
guys.
the Monty family.
All righty.
Love you, Pharaoh, too.